You're muted, Ruby.
I'm ready.
There you go. Good evening to you both. Okay. Well, I see we're all here and gathered, so let's begin. I'll read the Zoom paragraph, as I call it. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Great Barrington Board of Health will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at townofgb.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. See the instructions at the top of the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. With that being said, we'll officially call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Peter Stanton.
Here.
Ruby Chang.
Here.
And I'm here as well. First order of business is to approve the minutes from June. So I'll look for a motion to approve those.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from June.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. So second order of business is a continuation of our public hearing concerning 232 Stockbridge Road. So I will look for a motion to resume the public hearing.
I make a motion to resume the hearing.
I second.
And we'll take a roll call vote. Peter Stanton.
Aye.
Ruby Chang.
Here. I
And
second. Yeah.
I'm here as well. I was able to talk to Rebecca briefly today about some of the recent events that transpired yesterday. And so we felt it was prudent to open this public hearing and make some sort of decision tonight, especially considering what's transpired. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Rebecca?
So I visited the premises or next door to the premises this morning. I was looking on at the building from the Goodwill parking lot, and I got a brief update from the fire department. Obviously, I couldn't go in the building because of the structure being unsafe and not knowing what the damage really entails there. But the report from the fire department, confirmed that there's no longer any safe egresses. The building is now exposed to elements and it's not watertight. The doors and windows were broken into from fire and EMS. And so now those are unable to be secured. There's smoke damage and the cockroach infestation still persists. So with these added things and just the structural damage from the fire, I would like to ask you all to consider issuing an order to condemn the building. It's no longer occupied as of 3 weeks ago. We did an inspection to confirm this. All of the occupants have been housed in a different location. So with the existing violations and now, the prior violations and now with this report from the fire department, and it's just looking on at the building, I think that there's good reason to to condemn the building. It's, you know, it wasn't safe to occupy 3 weeks ago, and I think it's even more so now. So that's my recommendation, but feel free to talk about it amongst yourselves. I wasn't able to connect with our town council this afternoon, but I know that the correction order or the housing court complaint was filed back in June. I didn't get a court date originally in June, but I know it was continued at the request of town council to sometime in July. And that's what I was hoping to connect with him this afternoon about, but that didn't happen. So right now it's still an active complaint in housing court, but we have yet to go to mediation or talk to someone there as follow-up on our complaint. So that's my update.
Okay. I know we spoke about it, so I'm in general agreement with you, and I think on the same page. Peter or Ruby, do you have any questions or comments?
I'm just curious that it wouldn't have been condemned by the building inspector or the fire department due to what happened yesterday.
I don't know that that's off the table or on the table, but I didn't get a chance to discuss with the fire department about that specifically. I think I, right out of the gate, asked I told him that was my intention to bring to you all tonight. So most departments are more than happy to let the Board of Health do these sorts of things.
Okay.
We have an active correction order stating existing violations. So I assume we'll be getting some sort of report from the fire department about these new violations, in addition to just the fire that happened last night. So.
And your observations today.
What was that?
And your observations today.
In my observations today, yes. I have them on an inspection report too for documentation.
I'm in support of moving forward.
Ruby, any comment?
I'd like to hear what the owners have. Do they have anything to contribute to our discussion?
You're on mute.
Yep. Yes, we do. Okay, the building was vacant as of June 1st. And it has been completely cleaned out. It was completely cleaned out, I would say, by the middle of June. And the building has been sold. We are under contract. The new owner is buying it with the intent to demolish the building, which is how we felt from the get-go. This is the way it was supposed to have been. We were selling it as is, with the understanding that it's too old. There was too much to be done to it. It needed to be demolished. Fortunately for us, when our tenants were asked to leave the 1st of May, every single one of them responded to us in a very good way. And as of yesterday, all of our tenants, the first thing they did when they heard about the fire was to contact us to find out how we were doing. They were not just tenants, it was a community. In all the years that we've had those boys in there, we never made a penny off them. All they did was to pay for the expenses of the building. They feel as bad about it as we do. We tried to do everything to meet the demands of the Board of Health, but no matter what we did, it wasn't enough. And that's why we decided to sell. I have nothing else I can say.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Anything further, Ruby?
No, I think we should move ahead.
Okay. Well, since this is a public hearing, If there are any other public comments related to this matter, we'll hear them before we close the public hearing.
You could raise your hand using the icon, that would be helpful, so the chair can call on you specifically.
Well, not seeing anything or hearing anyone speak up, I will look for a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'm questioning, are we voting to consider demolishing the building or what? Is there any?
Any
Well, the
vote come after you close the public hearing, so we can first close and then we can decide to vote on steps moving forward.
Okay. All right. I agree to close the hearing.
Okay, so we'll take a roll call there for the dotting the i's and crossing the t's. Peter Stanton,
Aye.
Ruby Chang,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. So yes, we would be voting to condemn the building. And my understanding is that regardless of who owns or sells the building, the condemnation applies to the building. So that's what it follows. It doesn't follow the owners or new buyers or anything like that. It's applicable to this building. And I think I'm in agreement with Rebecca, and we've had many outstanding violations, and now the building is really completely unfit for human habitation. So I think this more than meets the criteria. And that's all I have to say about that. If you guys have anything else to say, now's the time.
No.
Okay. Well, I will look for a motion for condemnation of 232 Stockbridge Road.
Would
I
you
make a,
mind
go ahead.
including in your language for the motion to just authorize the health agent to placard the premise and secure the building?
Yes. It was to placard and to what?
Secure the building or secure
Secure.
the entrances, exits.
Okay. 232 Stockbridge Road.
Yes.
I make a motion to condemn 232 Stockbridge Road and authorize the health agent to placard the building and secure the entrances.
I second.
And we'll take a roll call vote once again. Peter Stanton,
Aye.
Ruby Chang,
Aye.
I vote affirmatively as well. So that concludes our business with this property, Rebecca, as far as I understand it.
Yes, you voted to close the public hearing, so unless something else comes up specific to the property and the building, I don't see the necessity to put it on our August Board of Health agenda unless there's something new to share.
Okay. And in terms of our previous legal approach, let's call it, what are we doing with that, or what do we do with that?
This would have been helpful for this question would have been helpful to answer, to have the town council's input, but I don't think it makes much of a difference in terms of our complaint filing. I think it just adds a memo to it that since the complaint was filed, we've condemned the building for.
Okay. Well, very good. I guess we will move on to our next order of business then, which is our continued discussion relating to 899 South Main Street and some of the indoor air quality issues. I did see a letter that came from that housing authority, and I don't know if there's anything further other than that, did you guys happen to see it, Peter and Ruby?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's similar to what I expected. They have they're claiming that they've done everything, they've been thorough and everyone signed off on it. So that kind of leaves us in a limbo in terms of next steps, because it's one of those things where, you know, the occupant has maintained and claimed that there's problems with the air there, and from the authorities' perspective, they say they've done everything, they've tested everything, everything's in working order, and all the relevant officials have signed off on it. So I'm a little unsure of what our next step should be, but I know, or I remember, Rebecca, you said you might have been reaching out to some other towns for some other information, or am I remembering that incorrectly?
Well, I'd covered that advice from other towns and cities at our previous meeting, and basically when I reached out to different cities and towns, they didn't have direct experience to pass along to us. The closest they could liken this particular issue to was mold as it pertains to indoor air quality. No one had experience directly dealing with indoor air quality in terms of fumes and off-gassing. And where we left the discussion last month was that if we could identify something that was broken, that needed to be fixed, we could move forward in that direction, and, you know, issuing a correction order to the housing authority and having their maintenance team fix that particular component that's causing the fumes. So reading the letter that Berkshire Housing sent to us earlier this week, dated July 6th, they did say that the pandemic put a hold on their regular maintenance schedule, which I believe was a twice annual checking of the HVAC system and filters, and, you know, naturally to protect their residents, they didn't want so many people in and out of particular units. And I think they also say that each individual unit has its own heating and ventilation system. So to reduce the exposure to COVID-19, they didn't have these ongoing maintenance inspections. The property manager or a representative from Berkshire Housing graciously agreed to come to our meeting, and I think they're in attendance now. And just reading this letter, which is pretty thorough, my one question is, you know, when do those regular maintenance inspections pick back up? You know, in our community, we're in a pretty good place in terms of, you know, community transmission. Our vaccination rates are such that we've only had 3 additional COVID cases in the last month. And I think it's okay, you know, to relax some of those protective measures in congregate care living situations like this, and, you know, check on things that are also having a public health effect. So again, that's my one question, is when will these regular maintenance inspections pick back up? And if the board has any questions too, I hope that the property manager will allow us to, go forward with that.
It looks like from the letter that there was a system was inspected on July 6th of this year.
Okay.
With at the last in the last or second to last paragraph at the bottom of the first page.
Yes, I don't know, did you want me to answer that, Rebecca, as the property manager?
Yes, please, if you could
Okay,
just
yeah.
state your name and for the record.
My name is Tina Gonzalez, and I'm Berkshire Housing Services. We're the property management company, and I'm the property manager. And we had been following pandemic regulations and those things. They were all lifted as of June 1st. We are allowing our residents to have company and visitors, and we're getting our regular contractual preventative maintenance back in play. That's why you see Comfort Control just did the first half of the year's inspection this past week. It'll be done again once the heating system comes up and is up and running, probably November. So that will be the second time this year. We're getting things like, our quarterly pest inspections back, all those types of things where we're having contractors in and out. You mentioned that my letter states each particular apartment, it's a mini split. So they have their own heating and AC. There's no common venting, it's their own. They have their own filter that is a filter that needs to be taken out and washed and cleaned every 6 months. That was just done this week. The apartments are kind of interesting because they're very self-contained. For instance, most apartment buildings were built in the past where like the kitchen range hood, it was vented, but it was all common vented. The person next to you, above you, all use the same venting. These kitchen range hoods are all individually vented. And then there's an ERV system that brings in the fresh air into common areas and into the apartments. And then again, that also has filters, and those filters are changed every 6 months. And we don't have our maintenance staff. The maintenance staff are not HVAC certified. So they may change the filters, but if there was a dirty filter or something, they have extra filters, they can change that. As far as the semi-annual inspections, we bring in HVAC professionals to do that. Just because we want to make sure the system, and Bostwick with the new addition and everything, it's the latest, most technological system available. So our guys are certainly not trained to do that. That's why we bring in this case, it's Comfort Control, and they're the ones who actually installed the system. And then we have our preventative maintenance contract with them.
Okay, and just one question on the ERV system. Is that something that cycles, or does that run continuously?
I believe it cycles. I'm not gonna say I know that. The director of property management is here. If he knows better, I'm gonna have John jump in. But I believe, I'm also the property manager for Bentley Apartments, and the ERV system there. It calls for fresh air. It knows when it needs it, and then it brings it in. It's not something that's a continuous cycle. And I believe Bostwick's is the same way.
Okay, so was there sensors that require that, or was it on a timer that just cycled every hour or 2 hours or
No,
whatever?
there are sensors. It's not a time thing. It knows. So if it needed fresh air right now, and in 20 minutes from now, it needs fresh air again, it's not like it's on a timer that it comes on once an hour. It comes on when it's needed.
And the intakes for those are not near any other exhaust pipes or anything like that. I'm sure.
No.
Okay.
No, and we did, when we were first aware of the concerns, we brought back, not only did we bring out an outside contractor who did an air quality test, we brought back the architect, Nick Elton, and Comfort Control to have them go through the system as well, knowing that this was just a building that had been brought online. Everything was under warranty. So the person who designed it and the person who installed it both came in and took a look at the system.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if this is also addressed in your letter, Tina, but when Comfort Control when they did their inspection on July 6th, do they get back to you with a report? Do you know then and there what their concerns are, if any, or?
Sure. They can provide me a written report if I ask for one. My site manager accompanies them. So the only thing that was necessary is he was ordering us some extra filters for the ERV system. But other than that, everything was up and running. There was a unit that was concerned about condensation. So we did have that mini split checked. He did review that because that had been brought to our attention. And that was determined that it was more an error in usage. When you have your AC running, you can't have your windows open as well. And this crazy weather we've been having, 1 minute it's really hot and then you get a thunderstorm and it cools down. So you want to open your window for fresh air, but you forgot your AC was on. So that can create some kind of issues as well, right down to freezing the unit up and the compressor, and then it being days before we can fix it. So that was determined to be all okay. He looked at that particular unit and there were no issues.
Okay, so basically, as far as your group is concerned, everything is is fully operational and in working order.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some investigation. There was a concern or a comment that they could smell other people's smells, but because everything is so self-contained, the odors would be coming from hallways. Unfortunately, when you live in an apartment community, apartment 101 might be baking apple pies and apartment 104 could be baking or making something curry orientated. Those smells will end up in the hallway and can come in through your doors. In those cases, we'll put in extra weather stripping if someone's being bothered from the common area smells when somebody's actually cooking. But those smells usually dissipate very quickly.
Okay. Well, I don't have any further questions. I think you addressed many of my questions in your letter. Peter, Ruby, do you have any questions?
No.
I just had some questions about the fumes. I thought it was the varnishing from the cabinets that was the issue. And even with good ERVs, that kind of fumes can still be present. And I was just wondering, was there anything that the housing authority had done to address that?
We did when we first received the complaint. We brought in Walt Basinger to do indoor air quality testing. And while there was still some off-gassing because it was a new building, the formaldehyde levels inside kitchen cabinets was higher than outside the kitchen cabinets. But it was determined that all the things, all the air quality, everything that was tested was below normal accepted levels.
Thank you for reminding us about that.
You're welcome.
Right, and I believe that our initial complaint, what we were called in for was the claim that there were odors coming in through the ducting of the heating and cooling ducting. And I can't remember at the top of my head if Walt addressed that in his report. But you've looked at the system, you've changed the filters recently, so I guess one course of action is to see if there's any change in the unit. And I do see the occupants here. So if the board has no further questions, and Rebecca, you don't have any
I do not.
further comments, I don't think it's inappropriate to just get a brief update from the occupants of the unit to see if there's been any change or any difference in terms of odors through the ducting. I understand the issue with the cabinets. There's always a certain amount of natural off-gassing depending on what kind of cabinetry, and especially new units. But I was more concerned, I think, and have been with the odors that were being claimed that were coming through the ductwork itself. You guys are on mute. If you just state your name and for the record, please.
Diana Wilson.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. The odors that are coming through a particular duct have nothing to do with odors in the hallway. There are definite cooking odors from different apartments at different times coming through the ductwork. And this is not just my experience, but the experience of a good number of other tenants who are experiencing the same thing and are upset about it, but do not want to speak up about it. They,
And has there been any change since they serviced the units just recently? Or is it?
I do not know when they were servicing. Nobody came to my unit, to my knowledge. Nobody serviced my unit.
Well, they can service them from where the actual equipment is, which is not inside your unit. It's in a separate location. They were serviced, it looks like.
Well, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. I still have intense odors on certain days within the unit, which make it difficult to be in there. I cannot use my AC because of the chemical odors that were coming through the unit, through the ductwork. And things have not changed, no.
Okay, well, maybe Rebecca, the last thing we could do is make a final site visit now that the units have been serviced, the filters have been changed, and see if we can detect anything. I mean, otherwise, we're kind of caught in the hard place where on one hand, everything is being said to be checked out, but yet we're still having issues mentioned by the occupants. I don't know how you feel about that, or what we can do, or what's prudent to do.
I just would like to add that the corridors and the large open space area where you enter into the Bostwick, I find the air heavy with chemical odors. I certainly react to them. It is very unpleasant to pass through there to go to the mailbox, and my eyes are burning every time I go through there. And it's very unpleasant, and other people have noticed it also.
Is that something you experience regularly or just periodically?
It's been regularly ever since the AC went on.
Okay.
And when the first time when they turned the AC on, it was just a horrible inflow of odors. I've had to close my vents off so that I do not get these odors. But it's also existing in the hallways and in the open space area. And as I say, it's unpleasant.
Okay.
I just want to mention something, and I think Ruby had actually a good point there, is that...
Could you just state your name?
Oh, I'm so
Rebecca,
sorry.
please?
I'm not used to this platform. I'm Sarah Oberschall. I'm Diana's live-in caretaker and her daughter, which we're also very grateful because my mom has been extremely depressed because of all of this. It's been really hard on her. So I just think she had a really good point because, you know, while, and we are really grateful, like, I have to say Berkshire Housing Services has been willing to, like, for example, my mother cannot use her heating or air. She has events, we had to literally tape it off. We had to put plastic over it and tape it off because it was just creating too many physical symptoms. And really, my mom would have to leave the house. We have fans blowing. It's a horrendous, actually, situation. So, so they were gracious enough to let us have an air conditioner that we purchased ourselves, as well. We did the air purifiers and everything. But the problem is that it's not a long-term solution for what's happening. What's happening is that she won't be able to use her heat, and she's not able to use her HVAC system because of the fumes affecting her physically. Is really, so I'm kind of curious about what Ruby was speaking about. Like, sure, it's great that the system is, and it is a really good system. I looked it up, but it's not necessarily that system. It's the fumes and the odors that are coming from the system, and what are they and where are they coming from? And correct me if I'm wrong. I think, Rebecca, you have the report we gave you the report. At the end of the report, it does state that if the odors persist, that further testing is advised or suggested. So that's why we went to mediation and went through the, powers that be to try to get further testing.
Can I just,
So
I was gonna say, Sarah and Diana, we can follow through with this because originally Walt was called in for off-gassing. So the odors and the smells are something different. So we can have him come back. and do a
there are actually, I'm sorry, it means there are actually two.
Let's have him come back and do a test for the odors that you're saying. I'm not honestly knowing the system and that there really isn't common venting. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yeah, it's very
I do know with air conditioning and the mini splits, there is Freon and all of that kind of thing. Maybe there's a sensitivity to Freon. I know lots of people have that. So, we could have him come back and test for something else. But as far as the off-gassing, that was his first report. He didn't really test for smells. So that is something different. So we could offer to have him come back and test for that.
You're saying he didn't actually test the air that was coming out of the heating and cooling vents?
No, he was testing for off-gassing.
Okay.
I'm Sarah Obershaw. So I would prefer that a third party that's chosen by somebody other than, I would prefer it not to be Walt. Because I have a technician that I found that has done other larger facility testing, because the type of testing that he does is absolutely not what Walt did for VOCs. And I do think it's VOCs. There is two different types of odors that's happening. There are food smells that are coming through one vent that is on the wall. Okay, there's one specific vent. It seems to be a vent that I don't know the names, like you knew the names. It's going back and forth. So it's like a flow, intake and outtake of air. I'm not an HVAC person, so I don't understand it. The other vents are up in the ceiling. Okay, those, when are turned on high, my mother cannot use them. That is when higher levels of formaldehyde come out. And we did have a technician come out and put a wand near it, and higher levels of formaldehyde came out, but we did not hire him to actually do the testing because we couldn't afford it. So, but what
You can certainly, Sarah, forward his name and information. I don't know what his costs are and all of that. I mean, it has to be something the property can afford.
Yeah.
And it has to be reviewed by my superiors. I can just say that might be something. I also think maybe having comfort control come out. I know there was a question by Diana to the site manager on the day that the Board of Health was coming out to override the system to turn the heat up really, really high. And my site manager wouldn't do that because that was certainly a health and safety concern to bring the heat up to 85, 90 degrees. So maybe there is, the system, you can control that system, but there's technology involved. So maybe if we had the comfort control person come out and show you how to use the AC, how you can control how much air is coming out, the temperature, you can shut it off. We would never want to override a system to bring the temperature of an apartment up too high. That certainly is going to skew the way things should be, because that's not proper operation of the unit. So maybe that will help too. So I don't know.
So it sounds like two things maybe should happen. Is one, that there should be further specific testing for the venting, and it sounds like there also should be more of a either a technician who's familiar with the system or someone who knows who can basically a third party who can observe, or observe is not the right word, who can smell the odors that's being smelled by the tenants. Because when we were there, I personally didn't encounter that same thing. And my understanding was it wasn't a continuous 24/7 type of thing. It was only when the system was activated. So I think that's something that really needs to happen. Someone else has to be there who is more familiar with this system, who perhaps can identify, but certainly it seems like.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think you mean like has the correct equipment in order to detect these VOCs.
Yeah.
That's what I heard Sarah saying, is that
That's the, yes, on the technical side of it, yes, but also on a practical side, if the actual, I mean, servicing the units from their mechanical rooms is one thing, but a technician, at least if they can observe the same thing, that can be another voice to say, you know, perhaps what's going on. But I absolutely specifically think that further testing sounds like it needs to happen.
Yes, I agree, Michael, because Walt's testing said they were there, but they were below acceptable levels. So no one's saying that they weren't there. They're there, but they're below the acceptable levels.
I mean,
So there's not much
from the heating and cooling, or just from the cabinetry?
from his first report says that there are VOCs, there's formaldehyde. He had levels of all of those things, but it states clearly that all of them are below normal acceptable levels.
I have a question. Could it be possible that when there are different, when there's different temperature changes, that because that's what happens basically. I mean, I can't be in there because I get such bad heart palpitations and headaches. But when the temperature changes, that is actually when this whoosh of like off gassing starts. So if it's like, for example, a really beautiful, crisp, sunny day. I mean, I don't want to bore you with all the details, but and it's a fall day and it's crisp and it's lovely and all the windows are open and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, sure, you don't smell a thing. When it's a really humid, damp day, or in the winter was really horrible for my mother, then it's not the case. When the whole place is closed up, and my guess is, you know, like I said, I'm not an expert, but my guess is that it has to do in part with temperature change.
I
Anyway.
just would like to clarify very quickly that there are two sets. There is a set of distinct odors that come through the ductwork.
Definitely.
And I definitely know that because I have stood beneath the ductwork when it occurs. And some of those odors were coming through the very specific duct that is the airflow duct, air intake, air outtake. Then there is another set of odors, which are chemical odors, which are coming from I don't know where, but they are there. And we refer to them as fumes or odors. The question is, what are they and where is it coming from?
And how is it remedied, if it can even be remedied at all?
This can occur in one bedroom, and the open space area may be much less. It could be the entire unit. It is something that you cannot predict at any time that this is going to the way it's going to be. But there are those two very separate set of odors. One is very chemical. The other, you might call it chemical, I don't know, but that's coming through the air intake, in-out flow of air. And once that duct was sealed off, those odors are not coming through. If I open that up, I am again going to get this specific odor of foods being cooked in other people's apartments, which can be pleasant at times or very unpleasant. And also this very overpowering smell, as though it's coming from the laundry room.
It's perfumey, yeah.
It's very, that perfume, that sweet, that smell. that if I were to put my head inside of a bottle of fabric softener, it would be there, or put my head under the outside vent from the dryer.
Yeah, that's.
That's what I would be smelling, and it can fill up the entire apartment. Extremely unpleasant to be in. Now, how that happens, I don't know. But there is something that's going on with the ductwork
And then in addition to that,
or the HVAC system. I don't,
yeah, even though the vents are plugged up, this sort of chemical off gassing still happens. So we're like, where is it coming from? We've put, there's no way that it can be coming out. It gets worse when you turn on the HVAC system. But now that we've even plugged it up, it's still happening, especially with the summer that we're having. It's pretty bad. So
Go ahead, Peter.
Hey, Michael, it seems to me like Berkshire Housing services are willing to entertain an outside or an independent place. They're willing to send in their people for testing. Why don't we pursue that and then review this down the road?
Right, I agree with that. It's just good to all be in the same room, so to speak, and we can all hear the same complaint and the same thing. So can we proceed along that route, Tina, to have further?
Absolutely. Sarah, if you'd like to forward me your contact, and I'll do some research through HUD, who they might, they have vendors that they specifically would refer. And then also within the community to see who we can find. And I think it would be helpful to be able to compare both of their reports, Walt's and this report, and then also in particular, the odors, the food odors, where that's coming from, and just double check everything. I think that makes sense.
that'd be great.
Good.
Yeah, and I just want to say again, we're really grateful for the, allowing certain, agreeing to like let my mom have an air conditioner and things like that. And
Absolutely.
so we're grateful for your help with all of that.
Okay.
So we want to help in any way we can. So I just feel at this point, a second opinion might be the way to go and compare the results.
Good. Well, I'm
Then we
glad.
might need a third opinion, but at least we'll know for sure.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad we were all able to hear the same things at the same time. So thank you, Diana. Please keep us up to date on what occurs in the testing that's done and results.
thank you, and thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Diana. It was good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the updates related to the Housatonic Water Works. This is our recurring agenda item. Do you have an update for us, Rebecca?
I do. So the long-awaited assessment, two-part assessment that the town paid for using the engineer AECom to assess what kind of capital infrastructure would be needed at Housatonic Waterworks or within that water company, how much it would cost, how long it would take. So that feasibility study was submitted to the select board sometime this week. And the hearing or the presentation that I've been talking to you about that was coming down the pipe has now been scheduled for next Monday, the 12th, and follow up on Monday, the 26th. So those next two select board meetings will be a presentation, or a component of that select board meeting will be a presentation on this feasibility study. So I believe it's public record at this point, or it will soon to be public record. So I can, check on it, whether or not I can get you guys this assessment, or if it's still in the works, but I think this is the final draft. It's about 220 pages. And yeah, the select board will hear a presentation about it over the course of July. And beyond that, I'm not really sure what next steps are. I think it'll be just as we've had it on our agenda as, continue to be on our agenda. I think the select board will continue to talk about this over the next couple months. Sharon Gregory drafted a letter that we all got this afternoon. I haven't had time to read it thoroughly, I've skimmed it, but I don't know if you all want to talk about this letter, what you want to do with it, if you want to just, anyway, I'll leave that discussion up to you because like I said, I haven't read it thoroughly, just skimmed it. And I want to thank Sharon for taking the time to put it together and sending it off to us.
Yes, I saw that letter, I read it, and I also thank her for the report that was forwarded along with it. I think it was a report dated from last fall from the DEP, which goes into a lot more specifics about the items that she mentioned in her letter. And so that's good. I'm still reading through that and digesting all that information. There's quite a bit there. And I think from my standpoint, I think there are obviously quite a few, as evidenced in that document, there are quite a few issues related to the Houstonic Water Works. And it's not just any one single thing. I think at this point, our emphasis has been, since we started putting it on our agenda, is to keep it kind of in the public discussion, to be a forum for people to come in and speak about things, especially as new information arises or as people put compilations together. And I'm thankful for members of the public who did that. It's always been a challenge of ours since we don't directly oversee public utilities, or in this case, public water source. It's made it more of a challenge, but we've done everything we can and continue to draw as much attention to it as we can. And I'm eagerly looking forward to the selectmen's conversation about it, because they have a greater ability to affect a real physical change and the dynamic of what's going on there. So for my part, I, as always, would welcome any new comments about issues we haven't talked about or any new information. But I think at this point, it's would be appropriate for us to hear what the select board has to say before we make any further statements or make any official motions or recommendations. But that's my opinion, and I'm just one of three.
I'm wondering if there's any pressure or recommendation of something specific that they could be looking into. And it would probably take Sharon or somebody else who's been looking into this closer to help us think of what that is. But it seems like this meeting that is happening with the select board, I'm just wondering if there's anything we can help them focus on.
Well, just reading through the DEP document, there's just quite a list of things. It'd be hard for me to say which one's more important or less important, but it is a fair point. Obviously we'd want to do whatever we could, but it seems like if there's a big recommendation coming in, or at least a report that needs to be analyzed, I'd like to see that before I said anything or made any recommendation. Ruby, any thoughts?
Yeah, I really like to hear Sharon's comment on this work that she has done to consolidate the concerns over a period of time that she's reviewed documents, and in light of the fact that they came very timely, but also before we have the final report from the town, which is I guess public information, but which we have not had a chance to read through yet. I think we're all very frustrated. I think that the recommendation by the DEP in the November letter we have not seen any results from that, even though the deadlines, some of them, which were quite important, were from January. Past reports have shown variations in chlorine content in various sampling sites. There's concerns about manganese and the pH value of water, using phosphorus as a supplement to the water to coat the piping to prevent rusting. All of these concerns has to be tightly managed and regulated, which can be done now with the appropriate regulations that the DEP has ironed out in their November report. However, we have not seen report as far as whether that has been done correctly. I also have concerns about how the sampling was done. Obviously, we have to take into consideration that the sampling is not done in a situation where we're taking into account people's private pipes, which some are quite old. However, even with that in consideration, what they're drinking out of their pipes is still a concern. And so what I like to do is to review this letter carefully and say, as a group who are concerned about the public health of this town, to say, we are quite concerned this should be a number one on your agenda as far as what to do. We need long-term plan, and we need short-term remediations. And how do we go about accomplishing that as a town? And so I would like to endorse this letter that Sharon has written very carefully, and kind of push this on to the select board to make sure that they understand that the Board of Health is extremely concerned and we want some answers. And having said that, I like to hear what Sharon has to say.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can, if you just, for the record, state your name, please.
Sharon Gregory, Hollenbeck Avenue. I've lived in the Berkshires for about 40 years, and most of that in Great Barrington. I was alarmed when I heard about all the water problems, and I think Terry Calgua did a very good job of reporting on various aspects of the complaints. I guess it was last year or so. So I saw a lot of public meetings conducted by Housatonic Waterworks. And so I was concerned that that's one perspective. And I was concerned that there weren't a lot of other perspectives except for what the end result was, yellow water or surging water or whatever. So I went to the records department, the Mass DEP, and over a period of over a year probably, have been requesting records so that I can read the raw data. And one of the most important ones I forwarded to you, dated November 6th. One of the reasons that was important is because, the PR was, it's just all about the manganese. And I went, it doesn't seem like, well, let's see whether or not it's true. So I read through the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities annual reports from HWW over a period of a number of years. I attended the Great Barrington Fire District meetings and tried to get some input as to, what are the issues that they have, how does it compare? I read the reports of the 2018 DPC Engineering organization out of Longmeadow that I think the Select Board commissioned, as well as the subsequent Cornell Engineering Group and the Leonard report, which focused on the sequestering of manganese. And I come about everything in trying to understand it from a lot of perspectives. water source, Long Pond, filtration, and monitoring the filtration and the quality of the water, the storage, distribution system, mostly the conduit and pipes. And so it's, not, it's a whole integrated process that one has to believe that it's going well. I feel that I've been using Great Barrington Fire District water for quite some time, and I haven't had any major concerns. Yet, reading the HWW comprehensive report from Mass DEP, there are many issues that range over a long period of time, and the lack of correction that alarms me. Now, in fairness, HWW has addressed some of these issues. They've called the equipment company to fix the equipment and so forth. But there are many operational issues, people not logging in the hours that they are overseeing the water, when the chlorine is too high, too low, and so forth, and no alarm systems. There are a lot of systematic issues dealing with all aspects of providing finished water that is safe. So I did this report to try to increase the public knowledge, give access to, the overseeing organizations, Mass DEP mostly, so that we're not just sitting on our hands and just wondering, like, what is the select board going to do? Now, I know they are concerned about it, but I think it would be very helpful, especially on an updated basis, to know what users are experiencing and what I see in all the things that I have read. I have noted before that I'm not a water chemist, but I did study a lot of water, chemistry, physics, calculus, and so forth, and that helped me to be very familiar with the very technical reports that especially the engineering companies have presented. But it's, to me, when you sit back, it's all about whether or not you trust the operation, whether or not you think that the oversight is enough, and whether or not you can bank on having safe water provided. The biggest issues for both water companies is the aging pipes. And one of the biggest things that was not addressed in HWW's responses over the last number of months is, what is their plan? The Mass DEP says, what is their plan for 5 and 10 years on capital expenditures to replace the pipes? Now, DPC Longmeadow has actually done the hard work of identifying all the types of pipes, the age, the recommended sequencing of replacing it, and even estimated costs. So the basic work has been done. Now, what I didn't understand is why HWW didn't answer that question. They provided a capital expenditures plan that dated from something like 2005 or so to 2020, and did not address at all the 5 and 10 year plan, which is critical for people to know. And yet they say, we answered all the questions, but they did not. They addressed the issues, but they didn't answer the questions. So I'm concerned that the input about what HWW has done comes from just HWW, and that we need another perspective. The engineering firms, the last two, were commissioned by HWW. So it's not an independent source. And I don't know what the answer is, except to provide as much information as we can from, sort of straight from the overseeing organizations, whether it's Mass DEP or Department of Public Utilities, or from the consumers. I'm not in Housatonic, so I'm not a consumer, but I urge people to document as much as possible and help the select board get their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate that letter. I think that it's something that I'm sure you're sending along to the select board.
Yes, I did. So hopefully they'll take that into consideration too. Hopefully it's not new news, but to tell you the truth, it's hard to, plow through all these technical reports to understand really the whole system that's involved in having safe water. The best thing is if we could sit back and say it's being taken care of. That's where I think we want to be. And we need to have that sense of assurance. And I don't feel the public is at that point.
Yes, well, the report that you included with one of your emails, that's what impressed me most of that, was that it's not any one issue, it's actually kind of a string of indicators and recommendations or requirements from DEP that span a number of years and that really paint a picture of a company that has more than one issue to grapple with, and that was informative for me to see that. And like you say, it's not just, oh, we need this plan, or oh, we need that part, or oh, we need this monitoring system. It's really seems much more comprehensive and global, if you will, of what's going on there. And so I'm grateful that you sent that along. It's the first time I read through all that and saw the laundry list of issues there. And it did surprise me that we haven't gotten more definitive answers from DEP on, well, if you make this recommendation or ask for require these systems or monitoring tables or lists, then what's the follow-up on that? How come that, does that mean it was done or not? That was kind of a question.
Well, this is a big question is, I perhaps not in all my correspondence, but there's a substantial investment of basically management time staff time, as well as money that's involved in really kind of addressing the problem comprehensively. And whether or not HWW has the will or the resources to do that has to be looked at in terms of coming up with a solution. It's not fixing whether the equipment was, this piece of the equipment can be replaced or whatever. Even the Leonard engineering report that focuses on sequestering manganese, it doesn't address all these other things. Is there an alarm system? How about the control of the algae? How about the sourcing of the water at the 4-foot level, low point of Long Pond? So all this needs to be taken into consideration. As I say, there's a big picture issue, and it's not necessarily just checking off, what was done to solve any one of those points. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. I've been kind of worried about it for a while.
Yes. Well, I know a number of us have been as well, but you've certainly put in quite a lot of work here, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I think it's we certainly know that the select board is not sitting on their hands either, and they're really starting to grapple with this issue. And so I think from our board, we would encourage them to really look through this letter as a real basic roadmap for understanding things that perhaps they already understand, or maybe be familiarized with some things that they might not be aware of, as was the case with myself.
Thank you.
Is there anything else from you, Peter or Ruby, on this?
No, I guess it sounds like we need to wait for the select board to do some processing.
It would seem that way. They have a clear indication of where things are going.
There may be a time over the next couple months that they do specifically ask for Board of Health input on their independent feasibility study in capital expenditures and improvement projects. And, I'll keep raising my hand to say that, we're reviewing this, we're staying informed as best as we can, and we talk about this every month. And if you want the Board of Health input, we're more than happy to give it.
Right.
Thank you, Rebecca. My feeling is that, strength comes from understanding and knowledge. And I think that having Sharon kind of dissect out what is concerning and labeling it builds the understanding that the board has about the problem, but also its strength and knowledge that gives us the ability to push this agenda forward. And I think Sharon has given us that knowledge, because you have a company who is selling a product, and that product is sold to the public. However, they're using special mass DEP and also the consumers to tell them if their product is good. And that just doesn't make sense to me. If you're selling a car, do you wait until there are multiple accidents before somebody says, oh, maybe we should check to make sure the car is working correctly, or this new innovation is kosher? It seems like very backward way of running a business, especially if the business is the safety of the public. And so having this knowledge, I believe, is going to have other people in the community, in the chair of making decisions, to understand that we're not just saying yay or nay. We truly understand what's going on. We have the technology to understand this, and this doesn't make sense to us, and we should do something about it. So I think that this letter shared by Sharon is helpful for us to get to that platform with power, with strength. So I think that it's what, I really appreciate what she's done. And I think that moving forward, I think that we should try to at least encourage more of this type of knowledge to come to us so we can make adequate recommendations.
Sure. As we usually do with this agenda item, if there's anything new information that people want to share, or if anyone would like to make a comment about an aspect of this issue that's not been talked about or discussed, now would be the time to do that. We would only ask that the comments be kept to 2 or 3 minutes at most. So now's the time if anyone has something new or a comment related to this letter we've been discussing tonight. Okay. I think the letter attests to itself, and once again, for myself and for the board, I thank you, Sharon, for submitting that to us. And I'm glad that it's going to the select board too for them to peruse. I see Denise with her hand up.
Yeah, hi, Denise Forbes, 325 North Lane Road. I just want to commend Sharon. I read the letter and I thought it was really great. And this is something that needed to be done a long time ago. And I am so grateful she had the time and energy and ability to really dig through and come up with that. It's very useful and helpful. My water right now is currently yellow, and it's like putting the bath together for my granddaughter is not conducive of that. You just can't put a kid in water that's brown. It's just gross. So I really hope that something gets done sooner rather than later, because I know a lot of people in this area are having the same problem I'm having. And we need this addressed sooner rather than later. And thank you, Sharon. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. I see Ann's hand up. Go ahead, Ann. Name and address for the record.
Ann O'Dwyer, 26 Kirk Street in Housatonic. I just want to reiterate what Denise just said, and I also want to thank Sharon so much. I just tried to write down an email, but I thought I'd speak up in the meeting. And I just want to actually back up what Denise said. I mean, our water has been yellow, brown, or off green for several days now, and it's not just the drinking. It's awful to bathe in. And we put a filter for drinking, which we understand we have to do. But, you just don't even want to bathe, and we're looking for places to go like athletic centers or something. So, I mean, it's just really awful. And Sharon, thank you again so much. And Denise, thank you for speaking up as well.
Thank you, Ann.
I don't know, I'm curious. I feel like this has been dragging on for a long time. And one thing I got out of Sharon's work was potentially what a huge investment this is going to be, and whether the Housatonic Waterworks has the will or the capacity to follow this through on their own. Seems like a big outstanding question.
It certainly is.
Well, one of the things I did say in the report is that I would love it if our officials can talk to the legislators to see if any of this could qualify for infrastructure investments, for helping whoever owns the water system in the future that serves Housatonic and other towns.
I see your hand, Michelle. Go ahead.
Michelle LeBear, 70 Division Street. First off, I'm listening to the comments made by Ann O'Dwyer and Denise Forbes, and I just want to remind people we pay a lot of money every month for Housatonic Water. I just paid for mine. And would you think of it this way? You go into Price Chopper, you buy a gallon of milk, you paid for it, it's sour. Wouldn't you bring it back and get your money back? It's not, the product isn't acceptable. I was just listening to a planning board meeting, and they're talking about affordable housing. Housatonic was brought up. So what are you going to do? Build affordable housing in Housatonic when we don't even can't offer clean water? So this issue has many tentacles out there, and in my opinion, at the very least, Housatonic water users should be at least discounted for their water. Now, that's something, it's a private water company, but again, we're paying a lot of money every month for Housatonic water, and to hear people can't even take a bath, and that one of the Housatonic water users, it has to go to a gym to take a shower, but they're paying for water. And all I hear about is how great Great Barrington is. And I'm on the fine, I'm born and raised here and everything. But we have a population that doesn't even have clean water. And so I think I'm hearing a couple months down the road, et cetera, et cetera. No, time's gone out. I've been hearing this for years. And I really respect Sharon for digging in and doing the research she has done, something she does exemplary work on that. And I think time is running out on this. I certainly hope Housatonic water users will be at the select board meeting on Monday night. I just posted it on Facebook to listen to this presentation. But I too want to thank Sharon for just taking it to a whole new level as far as a citizen with regard to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there anyone else? Not seeing anything. I imagine we'll have this on our agenda recurring for next month, and hopefully we'll have a more to talk about in terms of or in regards to the select board's discussion. So I think we can move on to our next order of business. Thanks again, Sharon, for coming.
Thank you.
Next order of business is our glyphosate discussion and some of our potential paths ahead.
Okay, so this topic we started about 2 years ago, maybe earlier. And unfortunately, over the last year, it took a backseat as we dealt with the pandemic. I believe we officially left off with our discussions on how to move forward with glyphosate in particular in October of 2019. And this is on the agenda tonight for you all to discuss pathways forward and continuing to talk about regulating or policy making in terms of glyphosate in Great Barrington as our impact and authority allows. So different Massachusetts towns and cities have taken different approaches in terms of regulating pesticides in their communities. Some have enacted policies, some select boards or city councils or even boards of health have tackled regulations. And then others have specifically addressed glyphosate and gone in the direction of just limiting or banning the use of that one particular pesticide. So, you know, it's no secret at this point in 2021 that pesticides of all kinds take an unknown toll on our health, our human health, as well as our ecological health. And like I said, we started this topic over 2 years ago. I think it's time to circle back to it and talk about how we can make a positive impact on our community in this area. So where we left off, we were discussing regulations as well as potentially placing a moratorium on the use of glyphosate on town-owned properties or town operated properties. So in the meantime, the town of Falmouth on Cape Cod really trailblazed with that action. They placed a 1-year moratorium on in as far as their jurisdiction allowed on town-owned and operated property. But in terms of Falmouth, that had a little bit of a wider breadth that included their golf course. They have over 300 acres of conservation land that's managed by the town. That's not to say that Great Barrington doesn't have its own great impact just in town-owned property alone. But it was really effective for Falmouth to place a 1-year moratorium on banning the use of glyphosate specifically there. So again, I'm just bringing it back before you today so we can talk about maybe doing just that or other pathways forward. So I'll leave it at that before I get into some other details on how to do that specifically, if you want to ask any questions or talk about it as a board.
Well, I think for my part, it seems that the writing of regulations is such a long-term project, and we can very easily get bogged down on the legal aspects. So having thought about that for the past months here, I have had a growing interest in a moratorium, and it sounds like Falmouth was some success with theirs, and perhaps that's something we can do immediately, and not jettisoning regulations, but at least we can make a definitive action now and continue to work towards more of a broader regulatory framework. Because as you said, there are other issues at play. And I also know you and I, Rebecca, have talked about having other boards weigh in too. The Ag Commission and the Parks Commission, I believe, amongst
Absolutely.
a few others.
I do think that that's the number one benefit of having a temporary ban on the use of, because it allows us a period of time, whether it's a year, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, to get input from different entities and organizations in town. What are the barriers to doing just that on their campus, or talking to the agricultural board, talking to the Parks Commission, and as well as Berkshire Hills Regional School District, and getting input from all of these different entities on how this would work for them long term.
It's also a way to get a broader adherence beyond just the specific town-owned and managed properties too, is what I'm hearing you say. Yeah, I like that idea as well. Any thoughts from you, Peter or Ruby?
Nan had sent us something from 2017 about the town of Great Barrington and the need to hold on use of pesticides. Whatever happened to that? It was brought up by the select board.
Ruby, I'm not sure. May I speak?
Yes.
Ruby, I think that had to do with the pollinator mandate that was put forward. Is Vivian here? I think I saw Vivian Orlowski. Vivian, was that something that you worked on with Bill Cook in 2017? Her
I see her here, but
her audio must be off. But in any event, I'm not sure what that is, and I can't answer that for you tonight. But we could certainly look into it.
Because it looks like there was some discussion already by the town, and I don't know what came of that.
It is actually presented as if it was a resolution that was passed, but at the town meeting. But I think that that's inaccurate. Or else it has to do with the pollinator initiative that Great Barrington was singularly modern in implementing.
What would be the best way to go about finding out what happened to that resolution?
I'll be happy to look into it for you, Ruby.
Okay, thank
well,
you.
even so, it being a resolution, I mean, that's all well and good, but I believe resolutions are they non-binding, or is it just I don't think there's any weight behind it, but with our discussion of a moratorium, how do you guys feel about that? As a more immediate step to take as we work to talk to other people and also get to work on the regulations. And in all frankness, they don't happen overnight, but our moratorium could happen much sooner than that.
Oh, I think that's good. I agree.
I also do.
Right. I think the one thing we were thinking about before was, I think when we had talked to the Conservation Commission, was that they manage some town-owned land, and I think our moratorium would extend as far as their jurisdiction begins. And I mean, we had that discussion well over a year ago, but I believe the point still stands, and we can certainly take it up. But I sit on the Conservation Commission as well, so I think they would be amenable to that condition. But that's my opinion on that, and not an official Concom statement, of course. So Rebecca, how would we proceed with our moratorium? Is that something that we task you to draft the language and look at the specifics of it, or do we need to vote on that tonight?
And you can vote on authorizing me to move forward with drafting or working with town council to draft moratorium language. It's legally binding. We'll come back before you to ask you to formally vote on that. But again, as you said, it doesn't happen overnight, and this certainly can happen much quicker, but it's not going to happen by our next Board of Health meeting. As I said, we still need to involve at least the Parks Commission, as well as maybe the schools too, because those are technically town-owned and operated campuses. And, we want everyone to be on the same page. We want them to hear it from us before they hear about it, just as this is something now they're required to do. So it can be a relatively swift process, but not by our August meeting. So if you want to just vote to authorize me to move forward, that's sufficient for tonight.
Okay. I see on our agenda that we have a comment time for this specific issue. So if there's no other questions from the board, I think we can open this up for brief comments, 2 to 3 minutes each, if there's anyone who wants to speak specifically about this. I see someone's hands raised, Gabriella, if you want to speak on this issue, the floor is yours. Just state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Gabrielle Senza. I am at 11 Railroad Street in Great Barrington. And I'm really happy to see this topic come up again. It's been heavy on my mind for a long time now. And I know, of course, COVID put a big damper on moving a lot of things forward. So I'm all for doing a moratorium. And I also love that you are speaking to that and taking that up as a real consideration. And I applaud you for that, because that's the kind of movement I'd love to see on other issues like Flint, Michigan, Housatonic Waterworks. So I think it's really important that if you have the power in the board, in the body, that you all are elected officials and, we voted for you, that you use that power when you can. And that, so I just wanted to say, I'm really happy to see this happening, and thank you. And Nan, thanks for all your work on this, and we'll see what happens.
Great. Okay, thank you, Gabriella.
Do I read?
I see your hand, your literal hand up.
Wasn't quite sure how to actually do it the other way.
That works. My
name is Ani Crowfoot, and I live in Housatonic. And I'm also echoing what Gabrielle and Nan said. Glyphosate has it's so established now that it's a cancer-causing agent, that's an endocrine disruptor. There's so many ramifications down the food chain to our mammals, to our water systems. It's really not anymore a controversial subject. So I just feel that the urgency that you're bringing to it is wonderful, and I appreciate it. The moratorium sounds like a great move. I'm a little concerned about how that works over the course of the year, and how some of the actors that use it and rely on it might come back, and then we'd be back at square one. But I don't know the process there, and I'm sure Nan will help to educate me. Thank you.
Thanks, Annie.
I have another hand up, Nan, unless you want to.
No,
Okay.
let others speak. That's fine.
Yep. Okay. Thank you,
You
Ani.
heard me a lot.
Dan, I see your hand up.
Oh, thank you. My name's Dan Ruderman. I live at 4 Knob Barrington. And I just wanted to put my hand down. So can you guys hear me, or did I disappear?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I love the idea of a moratorium. I love the idea of putting a moratorium in as soon as possible. This is exactly the kind of thing that we want to get in front of it anymore, but we want to end it while we can, not dealing with things like 30 years. Let's do it. Love to see that happen. Important.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other hands?
This is Vivian Orlowski. I'm on the phone, and I was wondering if I could just make a brief comment.
Yes.
I chair
Address for the record too.
I chair the Agricultural Commission, and we are a right to farm community. So the Agricultural Commission would need to study any possible moratorium in relation to the right to farm, which cannot interfere with whatever is needed by farmers to do their farming. But that said, at least nationally, the use of glyphosate is far and above use in landscaping for uses more than in farming. Because if you think of the farmers are trying to economize and minimize their input costs and just use what's absolutely necessary, whereas anyone who can, go to the store and buy a product that will, get rid of their weeds, supposedly, is free to apply whatever they want to on their lawn. And that goes for individual homeowners as well as for institutions which have caretakers for their properties. And that's where looking at a moratorium certainly could have actually a bigger effect than trying to impinge on farmers, which we may not be able to do in any case because of the right to farm. That said, certainly from the pollinator aspect, there are studies now showing that glyphosate, along with the neonicotinoid pesticides, are very detrimental to our pollinators, and our whole growing food depends upon pollinators. Our whole ecosystem depends on pollinators. 75% of flowering plants, which are grown for food and also just for our ecosystem, depend upon pollinators in order to reproduce. So protecting pollinators, as was voted by town meeting in 2016 in our resolution to become a pollinator-friendly community, which was an educational effort, not an attempt to ban anything, but it certainly did recommend reduced use of pesticides and other chemicals that were harmful to pollinators. So I guess in conclusion, I'd like to encourage moving forward on this for the general health of pollinators and people. But I also want to remind us that we need to be mindful of farmers' rights and their ability to earn a living. So we will take this up in the Agricultural Commission in terms of any implications for farming in the future. Certainly on town land, since there is no town farm, the town lands and properties managed by the town, that would not influence farmers. And personally, I can't speak for the Ag Commission because we haven't voted on this. Personally, I think it certainly is something that would be beneficial to pollinators and to people. Not necessarily in that order, although people depend on pollinators.
Right. Just to state again, our moratorium, our jurisdictional authority only goes so far as town owned or managed property. So I'm pretty sure we're not impinging on any agricultural activity.
That's great, and from here again, I can't speak for the commission, but we will look into this, and hopefully we can come up with a consensus to support a moratorium for town properties and town managed properties. In terms of the pollinator action plan that we did in conjunction with the Conway School of Sustainable Landscape Planning and Design, that was in 2018. And our Department of Public Works, our Superintendent of Public Works, Sean Van Dusen, was involved, and they have a policy of no use of pesticides on town property already, and they were going to integrate the recommendations of the Pollinator Action Plan, which is available for free on the town website. Just put in Great Barrington Pollinator Action Plan. It's a 90-page report, and he was using that as a guideline, not only for town management, but for future contracts with subcontractors that the town uses for various projects.
Right. Great. Well, thank you for your comments, Vivian.
Vivian, if I can suggest to the board while you're still in attendance here that we would be interested in having a joint meeting with the Agricultural Commission at some point in the next coming weeks or months. Maybe as you all decide, or as you all talk about a moratorium and its potential implications or coming up with a vote on that. I think we would probably like to have a joint meeting. Is that right, Michael?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
Great. Yeah, I'll be glad to work with you on setting a date that works for both of your board and our commission. And it's not going to be this month. Maybe in August or September. I guess you're interested in. I guess it depends. Your schedule is what would need to guide us. What would you say in terms of your schedule that you would need to meet with us? Would it be in August or could it be possibly in September?
Well, we know this is the height of the growing season, and we want to make this discussion accessible for the Ag Commission. Not to say that this specific moratorium will directly affect agriculture and the farms in our community directly, but still, I don't think there's a problem with waiting till September.
Great. Actually, I mean, I think it'll have a beneficial effect both on farmers and gardeners, because if we take steps that stop having detrimental influence on pollinators and other helpful insects, that's part of the ecosystem that leads to better growth of the types of fruits and vegetables that we're trying to grow.
Yes. True. Okay, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for taking the lead on this.
Well, we've been encouraged on by Nan. And Nan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, again, yes. I just wanted to say, Vivian, that in discussion over the past couple of years has been a real intention to work hand in hand with an educational outreach, which I think is complements your efforts with the pollinator action plan. Yes, it's a multi-tiered effort, but absolutely, the education I think is one of the largest parts of it.
Well, I mean, I think one of the most important things is not only emphasizing the detrimental effects of glyphosate, which are well documented, and thank you, Nan, for bringing in speakers and experts to attest to that. But I think people I think are well intentioned, and we need to provide information on what they can, other options, other strategies for managing their land, so that they don't feel that they need to depend on these products, or they don't feel that they're going to be deprived if they can't just go in and get this off the shelf.
Right. I think another thing that had been discussed at some point was to limit the use to people who are trained and licensed, and to take it off at some point, take it off the retail shelves. But I think that's way down the road. But in any event, yep, limit injudicious use of it that's casual and dangerous. And that's by letting people know alternatives. You're absolutely right.
Is there any other comments on this issue? I see your hand. You're muted, Ani.
Just a question. So this moratorium would not apply to the local hardware stores and the supply of Roundup?
I don't believe we have the authority to ban the sale of it. It's just the use of it on town land that we can have power to influence. I think that the banning of sale is more of comes from the state level.
I see. Okay.
So it's something small, but it's something definitive that we can do.
It's a beginning.
Right.
Symbolic.
Yes.
Important.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you, Eileen. Go ahead.
All right. I looked up on, darn, where is it? Okay. The February 2020 newsletter, which talks about a meeting with the Conservation Commission and a possible moratorium.
Yes.
And the final paragraph was, members agreed with Mr. Lanou that more information should be put on the board's page on the town website. So I just remind you.
We can do that.
Yeah.
More information about glyphosate in particular, or the moratorium.
Chemical.
That was February of 2020. That nothing was happening then. I think we.
Volume 29, number 7.
It was conservation, probably.
Yes. Well, I think we got distracted there for a while with the events of last year. But we can certainly do that, yes. Thank you for pointing that out, reminding us, Eileen.
Bravo.
Anyone else? Not seeing any more hands raised. We will move on to our health department updates. Thank you, everyone who weighed in on that the glyphosate discussion.
Did we formalize?
Oh, yes, you're right. We have to vote. I'm sorry. So I guess we'll look for a motion to authorize Rebecca to begin pursuing a moratorium on the use of glyphosate on town-owned and managed properties.
I make a motion to authorize Rebecca to move forward with the moratorium on glyphosate on town properties.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. We'll do the roll call vote for the official tally. Peter Stanton,
Aye.
Ruby Chang,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. Okay, Rebecca, what do we have for health department updates?
Okay, so we have a bullet point, I believe, on the public health nursing contract for fiscal year 22. So we've also signed a contract with the Public Health Alliance, who normally provides our nursing services. It's reported last month or in months, recipients of a public health excellence grant, where we've been able to form a collaborative with other South County towns where we will be receiving public health nursing services from 2 full-time nurses that will be operating out of Tri-Town Health Department. So because there are 7 towns in this new collaborative, we don't know at this point yet how, the state just, awarded this funding, and we applied for it, they awarded it, and we are now kind of backtracking with how we organize amongst the alliance and the new collaborative, and who gets what amount of services and who goes where, and just the logistics of that. So that's why we've signed another contract with the alliance, just to continue the status quo with our nursing services. It worked just fine throughout the pandemic, and if we get the added bonus of more public health nurses through the South County Collaborative, that's wonderful. But the update or the new information in the last month with this is that because the 2 nurses through the South County Collaborative are new to our region in terms of disease surveillance, we had to submit a letter to the ISIS team. Don't ask me what that acronym stands for, but it's the epidemiology team that does technical work for our MAVEN disease surveillance database. We've seen MAVEN reports before from the Public Health Alliance, but in order to to get access to that data, we had to make that official by sending a letter saying that we authorize Amy Hart and Jill Sweet to have access to our disease data. So far, so good. I think we're still working on getting access for Jill Sweet, the newest nurse, but Amy Hart, who's going to be our lead nurse, or the South County's lead nurse, has worked with Maven in different settings. So she can really hit the ground running. And I think she's even pulled some data for us on Lyme disease, and is working on a data dashboard for where we are in Great Barrington in terms of COVID-19 transmission with some the Delta variant, but then some other variants. And so I'm hoping for next meeting, or as I get it, I can send it off to you. It looks really, really helpful. She's prepared graphs. It's really amazing. And I think it will be a nice supplement to whatever the Alliance produces. You know, we get those quarterly reports from them of all the diseases that we saw within the last quarter, but, you know, organized in graphs and prevalence rates can be really helpful too when looking at disease data. So just wanted to share that.
Okay. That sounds good. I'm looking forward to see how this all unfolds. I know having more nursing coverage is always a good thing. If there's nothing else, we can move on to our COVID updates, whatever they may be.
So I'm happy to report there really isn't anything to report. The last couple months or weeks, we haven't had any cases, but in June, we saw 3 new positive cases for COVID-19, which, yes, is an uptick, but it's still wildly below what we were looking at even 3-4 months ago. And 2 of those 3 cases were within the same household and unvaccinated too. They were under the age group which you can receive the vaccine at this point. So.
Okay. We have, I don't have any questions on that. Do you, Ruby or Peter?
I just have a question. Do you know what the rate of vaccination in South County is?
I don't know off the top of my head, no, but I can get that data for you. South County in particular, or Great Barrington, or
just
what?
Great Barrington, just so that whether I'm just concerned whether is there anything the Board of Health can do to help promote vaccination, such as, you know, I'm sure that they're doing that with Heather Barbary, but I was just wondering, does the Board of Health need to help out in any way that you know of?
I don't. I think the sticking point, the age group that's really lagging in terms of vaccination rates is the 20 to 29-year-old group. And I know the state put out that Mass Vax program, you know, giving away you can enter into a raffle to win $1 million if you get your vaccine, hoping to target that age group and that demographic that still is showing disease or vaccine hesitancy. On a local level, I think that that age group and that demographic still remains the least vaccinated. What I had talked to Heather Barbary about last, I haven't had a chance to get an update from her recently on this, but they were thinking of, if they haven't already, moving the COVID testing facility or combining it with a vaccination clinic. They're done doing them at the middle school, except for, your second dose. But combining that, like, hey, you're here to see if you have COVID-19. Do you want a vaccine so you don't have to keep doing this? So I know that was a way that they were trying to maybe bridge a gap. But, as a Board of Health, I haven't had anyone approach me saying that the Board of Health should consider this to decrease vaccine hesitancy. But if I do get those requests, I will certainly pass them along.
Okay. I see we have a citizen, a place for people to ask any questions. Are there any questions related to this part of the agenda? Questions concerning COVID? I don't see any, so I'll take that as a no. And we can move on to our Board of Health questions and updates. If any of us have any burning questions or thoughts, now's the time to share them. I don't for myself tonight. Peter, Ruby, anything further?
All set.
No.
Okay. Any questions from the media who will still be here?
The information about chemicals is going to be put on the website.
Rebecca, yes.
We can add a tab on the health department page for glyphosate, and we'll have to vet it a little bit. And Nan has sent us a wealth of information on the topic. But yeah, we can put some fact sheets up or just sources on how to learn more about that particular pesticide on our website.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised or people jumping up and down for attention. So I'll take that as no further questions. And if there's nothing further, I think we can adjourn the meeting. So with that, I guess we have to take a roll call for adjournment. So Peter Stanton?
Aye.
Ruby Chang?
Aye.
And I vote affirmatively as well. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Ned. Diligently taking notes there. And for everyone else who attended, thank you.